Today's story is about the Songololos who go and play, but they didn't know where they were going to go. Anyway, they got up early that morning, they spoke to one another, and then they said, let's find friends. And so they walked around out of the compost heap, down and around past the house. They looked around, they called, and eventually there were some friends that answered. A little while later there were more friends that came along, and by the end of their walk around the garden, there must have been about 8 or 9 of them all together. Let's do something different, they said. What shall we do? Well, the one said, I heard there was a new place for us to play. A new place, said the others. What kind of place? We don't know, we've never been there. So they went and they had a look for this new place. They went up the stairs. One or two of them struggled to go up the stairs by the little house, and they found that when they helped each other up the stairs, it worked better. Eventually they got onto what they thought was a big playground, but it was actually the veranda of a house. They snuggled along the wall and eventually came to where they thought there was this big playpen for them. They climbed up and in. And then their feet felt all funny. It wasn't a playpen, it was a sand pit. There was no trees, there were no leaves, there was nothing that they were used to in the compost. But there were lots of colourful things, toys that had been left in the sand pit. They discovered that if they burrowed a little bit, the sand would part and they would be able to go under the sand. And so they started playing hide and seek in the sand. They also found that some of the toys had openings, and when they climbed into the openings, they could hide away from one another. And so they did that. And then the one said, let's climb up on top of these things. And they climbed up onto the pile of toys that was there, and they found that they could slide right down and fall into the sand, and the sand was soft so they didn't get hurt. They played for a fairly long time, and then slowly they got tired, and eventually they said, let's go back home. We need to have a rest, we need to have something to drink and maybe something to eat. And so they did that. They started heading off out of the sand pit, down the stairs again. They were one by one going across the lawn, and somebody said, where's Jeffrey? And they looked around. And they looked the other way, and they couldn't find Jeffrey. What happened to Jeffrey, they said. We don't know. Oh dear, maybe he's been left behind. So off they went, back up the stairs, climbing over the step and up the next one and over the step and up the next one, till they got to the sand pit, went up over the sand pit barrier, and then they called for Jeffrey. Oh, what do you want? Said Jeffrey. He'd fallen fast asleep in one of the toys, one of the little cars that was under the sand, half under the stand. Come on, Jeffrey, we've got to go home. So they went, took Jeffrey, and they started walking all the way home again. Down the stairs, across the lawn, round the corner, one by one. As they got nearer each of their homes, 1 or 2 of them would go off to their home, and eventually the 2 Songololos that started out got back to where they lived. That was a lovely day, said the one to the other. Yeah, we must do it again one day. Their mom came out and said, there's time for you to eat. It's time for you to eat food now. Come and have something to eat, and there's some lovely fresh water from the spring. The spring? Yes, she said. Well, it wasn't really a spring. It was just where the dew had dripped down off the leaves above their little burrow. They drank the water, they ate their food, and then they sat and they talked about all the fun they'd had that day. And that was the day the Songololos went to play in the sand and remembered to bring everybody home.